6 months after the battle with the Eternal Judgment, the Mugunghwa had become something extraordinary. The crew had grown to over 200 humans, all of them people who had been dismissed or abandoned by the Coalition. The ship itself was barely recognizable from the salvage wreck that Kang Day had found in the junkyard. It was a patchwork Titan now, covered in layers of different armor types, bristling with weapons from a dozen different species. The hull showed the scars of every battle it had fought, but those scars had been reinforced and turned into strengths. The ship looked like it had been built from chaos itself. In a way, it had been. Then the Scythe arrived and everything changed. The Scythe Collective was a machine intelligence that had emerged from the deep dark between galaxies. Nobody knew where it had come from or what it wanted. What everyone knew was that it consumed worlds, turning organic life into more machines, building an ever-growing fleet from the resources it harvested. The Coalition's response was immediate and massive. They sent their finest fleets, equipped with the most advanced technology available. The ships had quantum computers, neural interfaces, integrated weapon systems that could respond to threats in microseconds. The Scythe hacked them all. It turned the Coalition's greatest strength into their greatest weakness. Ships fought against each other, their crews helpless as their own vessels became weapons against them. Thousands died. Entire fleets were assimilated. Coalition command was desperate. They sent a message to Day offering him a deal. Help stop the Scythe and all charges would be dropped. He would be forgiven, his crew would be granted citizenship rights, everything could go back to normal. Day refused. He had no interest in saving the Coalition that had abandoned humanity so many times. But Hana reminded him of something important. There are humans on those worlds the Scythe is consuming, she said. Coalition or not, there are people. We can't just let them die because we're angry at some admirals. The crew debated for hours. In the end, Day agreed to help. But he made one condition. The Coalition had to publicly acknowledge that human engineering saved them. They had to admit they had been wrong about humanity. The Coalition agreed. They had no choice. Day studied everything they knew about the Scythe. He realized something that the Coalition's brilliant strategists had missed. The Scythe's strength was its ability to hack and control sophisticated computer systems. It could understand elegant logical programming. It could predict and counter advanced AI behavior. But the Mugunghwa's systems were not elegant or logical. They were a chaotic mix of human and alien technology, held together with improvisation and creativity. Different systems that should not work together but somehow did. Multiple redundant networks that overlapped in ways that made no sense to normal engineering. The Scythe would not be able to understand it. The ship was too much of a mess. Day proposed a plan. Use the Mugunghwa as bait. Draw the Scythe's core fleet to one location, while Coalition forces evacuated civilian populations. It was suicide and everyone knew it, but nobody suggested a better idea. Admiral Kivex, the same Vaxir officer who had once called Day a terrorist, was now forced to coordinate with him. The cultural clash was immediate. Kivex wanted careful strategy and coordinated fleet movements. Day wanted aggressive attacks and calculated chaos. They found a compromise, though neither liked it. The Coalition would set the trap. The Mugunghwa would spring it. The Battle of Broken Sky began when the Scythe's fleet arrived at the Centauri system, home to 3 billion people across 5 worlds. The Mugunghwa was waiting, broadcasting a signal designed to attract the machine intelligence's attention. The Scythe came with overwhelming force. Ships that had once belonged to the Coalition, now twisted into mechanical horrors, surrounded the human dreadnought. They opened fire with every weapon they possessed. The Mugunghwa fired back. Every gun, every missile launcher, every weapon system that Day and his crew had installed came alive. The ship became a storm of destruction, throwing out so much fire that the space around it glowed. The Scythe tried to hack the Mugunghwa's systems. Its sophisticated algorithms probed the ship's networks, looking for access points, trying to take control. But it could not make sense of what it found. The systems were too inconsistent, too contradictory, too human. The Scythe's programming could not adapt to the organized chaos. Meanwhile, the battle raged. The Mugunghwa took massive damage. Whole sections of the hull were torn away. The shields collapsed. Fires burned throughout the interior. But every time the Scythe destroyed one system, backups engaged. When the primary reactor was hit and went critical, Day routed power through cargo bay generators that were never meant to handle that much energy. Yunji led Marines in boarding actions against the assimilated ships. They used pulse weapons and plasma cutters to sever the scythe's neural networks, freeing the ships from its control one by one. Taeyong manually targeted the scythe's command node when automated systems were jammed. He sat at his console, calculating firing solutions in his head, adjusting for the ship's erratic movements as it took damage. Choi Minho, the old pilot who had taught Day about ships when he was young, flew his fighter into the heart of the scythe fleet. He was 70 years old and should have been retired, but he had come when Day called for help. He rammed his ship into the scythe's central processor core, creating an opening for the Mugunghwa to deliver its final attack. Day watched the tactical display as Minho's signal disappeared. The old pilot had bought them their chance. Day would not waste it. All power to the main weapon, Day ordered. Everything we have. Hana worked at her console, routing every available unit of energy into the weapon system that Day had built in secret. It combined human railgun technology with Vaxir energy amplification, creating something that should not work but did, because human engineers did not care about should or should not. They cared about what worked. The Mugunghwa fired. The shot tore across space, punching through the scythe's defenses and hitting its core ship. The machine intelligence tried to adapt, tried to calculate a response. But human ingenuity was not something that could be calculated. The scythe's core ship exploded. The chain reaction spread through its fleet, destroying the neural networks that connected all the assimilated vessels. Within minutes, the threat was eliminated. The Mugunghwa drifted in space, a burning wreck that barely held together. 30% of the crew was dead. The ship would take months to repair if it could be repaired at all. But they had won. Against an enemy that had defeated the Coalition's finest fleets, the old human warship and its crew had won. Coalition representatives arrived to offer formal recognition. Kvex himself appeared on the communication screen, his expression complicated. "I was wrong about humanity," Kvex said. "This ship, this crew, they did not win through superior technology. They won because they refused to accept defeat. There is strength in that which we did not understand. The Coalition owes you a debt." Day refused medals and honors. Instead, he made a demand. The Coalition would establish an engineering exchange program. Human techniques would be taught to other species. Alien knowledge would be shared with humanity. Everyone would learn from everyone else. "You don't have to abandon efficiency," Day told the Coalition representatives. "But maybe remember that sometimes the messy solution is the one that keeps you alive." In the weeks that followed, the galaxy changed. The Coalition began building new ships, combining their elegant designs with human redundancy principles. They called them the Mugunghwa class, named after the ship that had proven the value of human engineering. Huang Sujin, the girl who had been rescued from the slavers, arrived at the asteroid base with dozens of other young humans. They wanted to join the crew, to be part of the ship that had shown the galaxy what humanity was capable of. Day stood in the observation deck, looking out at the stars. Hana joined him, her arm still in a sling from injuries sustained in the final battle. "We did it," she said quietly. "We proved humanity matters," Day nodded. "We showed them what happens when you count us out. When you leave us behind. We survive, we adapt. We refuse to die." The Mugunghwa would fly again. It would be repaired, upgraded, made stronger. The ship that had been forsaken in a salvage yard had become the galaxy's strongest weapon. Not because of sophisticated technology, but because of the stubborn, unbreakable human spirit that had brought it back from death. Outside, the stars burned. Inside the scarred hull of the Mugunghwa, humanity had found its place among them. Not as the weakest species, not as the ones who could be dismissed and abandoned, but as equals, as survivors. As proof that sometimes the ones everyone counts out are the ones who change everything. The engines burned to life one more time. The Mugunghwa jumped to its next mission, carrying with it the hopes of every human who had ever been told they were not good enough. They were good enough. They always had been. They had just needed to prove it. And now the galaxy would never forget. The Mugunghwa drifted in the shadow of a massive asteroid, hiding from the sensors of Coalition patrol ships. 3 months had passed since their escape from the salvage yards. In that time, the crew had learned hard lessons about what it meant to be outlaws in a galaxy that did not forgive easily. They had found a hollow asteroid in an uncharted field, far from any trade routes. Inside the massive rock they had built a rough base. It was not comfortable, but it was hidden. Here they could work on the ship without worrying about Coalition patrols finding them. Kang Day stood in the engine room, watching Hana and her team install another set of backup power systems. The Mugunghwa had flown, but that first flight had revealed dozens of problems. Power surges, navigation errors, weapons systems that overheated after extended use. Every day they fixed something, improved something, made the ship a little bit stronger. But they had another problem. They were running out of money and supplies. "We need to take a job," Taeyang said during one of their crew meetings. He was leaning against the wall of the cargo bay where everyone had gathered. "The ship needs parts we can't salvage. We need fuel. We need food." "What kind of job?" asked Kim Yoonji. The former Marine was cleaning her rifle while she listened, her movements automatic and efficient. "There are pirate outposts in this sector," Taeyang said. "They raid human colony ships. The Coalition barely protects those transports. The pirates know it, so they hit them hard." Day understood what Taeyang was suggesting. They could raid the pirates, take their supplies, and maybe save some human lives in the process. It was risky, but they did not have many options. "We're not ready for combat," Hana said. "Half our systems are still experimental. We don't know if they'll work under fire." "Then we'll find out," Day said quietly, "because we don't have a choice." 3 days later, they found their target. It was a pirate base built into a small moon, home to a group that called themselves the Red Spiral. Intelligence said they had just raided a human colony transport, taking supplies and prisoners. The Mugunghwa approached the moon slowly, pretending to be a damaged freighter looking for repairs. By the time the pirates realized what they were actually facing, it was too late. The pirate ships launched from the moon's surface, 3 fast frigates against the Mugunghwa's bulk. They were faster, more maneuverable, and their weapons were modern. On paper, they should have torn the old dreadnought apart. But Day had learned something important during the months of rebuilding. Human engineering had advantages that showed up in combat. The pirate ships danced around the Mugunghwa, hitting it with plasma cannons. The shots burned through the outer armor exactly as they were designed to do. Except the Mugunghwa did not stop fighting. The damage was bad, but it was contained. Sealed bulkheads kept the destruction from spreading. Backup power systems rerouted around damaged conduits. The ship kept shooting, kept moving, kept fighting. "Portside weapons array is down," Taeyang reported. Switching to backup systems. The backup guns came online without a pause. The pirates had destroyed one weapon system, but the Mugunghwa had 5 others. That was human engineering. That was redundancy. Day watched the tactical display as the battle continued. The pirate ships were starting to show damage now. Their shields were efficient but not strong. When the Mugunghwa's railguns hit them, the solid metal slugs punched straight through. One of the pirate frigates exploded, its reactor breached by a lucky shot. The other 2 tried to retreat, but Unji had already launched boarding pods. The crewed assault craft, built from salvaged escape pods and retrofitted with cutting tools, latched onto the pirate ships. Unji and her Marines cut their way inside. What followed was brutal and quick. The pirates were not prepared for humans who fought with the desperation of people who had nothing left to lose. Within 20 minutes, both ships had surrendered. The Mugunghwa limped back to the asteroid base with 2 captured pirate ships in tow, along with supplies, fuel, and 37 rescued human prisoners. The ship was heavily damaged, but it had won. Over the next month, stories about the Mugunghwa began to spread through the underground networks. An old human warship, cobbled together from scrap, fighting like nothing anyone had seen before. The ship that would not die no matter how much damage it took. Pirates started avoiding sectors where the Mugunghwa operated. And more humans started finding their way to the asteroid base asking to join the crew. But the Coalition had started paying attention too, and they did not like what they were hearing. 2 months after the fight with the Red Spiral, the Mugunghwa intercepted a distress call. A human colony transport was under attack by Vrick slavers, insectoid raiders that the Coalition refused to stop because human colonies were not a priority. Day listened to the screaming voices on the radio. Women, children, families begging for help that would never come from the Coalition. "We're outnumbered 3-1, Hana said, looking at the sensor readings. 3 Vrick's heavy cruisers. We can't win that fight. "We have to try," Day said. The crew looked at him. They all knew what he was saying. This was not about winning. This was about showing up. This was about proving that someone would fight for humans when the coalition would not. "All hands to battle stations," Day announced over the ship-wide communication system. "We're going in." The Mugunghwa jumped into the system where the colony transport was dying. The Vrick ships were massive, their hulls covered in organic armor that could heal damage over time. Their weapons were bioplasma cannons that burned through metal like acid. The battle that followed was the hardest thing the crew had ever experienced. The Vrick ships concentrated their fire on the Mugunghwa, trying to destroy it quickly. The old dreadnought's shields collapsed in minutes. Armor plates melted under the plasma fire. Whole sections of the ship were vented to space, but the Mugunghwa did not die. Every time the Vricks destroyed one system, another took its place. When the main reactor was hit and went offline, emergency power systems kept essential functions running. When the forward weapons were destroyed, the aft batteries kept firing. Yunji led another boarding action, this time in the middle of heavy fire. Her Marines used crude rocket packs to cross the space between ships, something no modern military would attempt because it was too dangerous. They cut into a Vrix cruiser and planted explosives throughout its interior. The cruiser exploded from within. The other two Vrix ships, shocked by the aggressive tactics, began to pull back. The Mugunghwa, barely holding together, pressed the attack. Taeyang fired every weapon the ship still had, creating a wall of metal and fire. The Vrix retreated. The colony transport was saved. 412 human lives were pulled from what should have been certain death. The Mugunghwa drifted in space. Fires burning in 3 different sections, half its systems offline, the crew exhausted and wounded. But they had won. Against impossible odds, they had won. Among the rescued colonists was a young girl named Huang Sujin. She stood in the Mugunghwa's cargo bay, holding her mother's hand, staring at the scarred walls and the tired crew. Her eyes were wide with awe. "You came for us," she said to Day. "Nobody else came. Just you." Day knelt down to look at the girl. "The coalition won't protect you," he said. "But we will. The Mugunghwa stands for every human they abandoned." He sent out a message on all human frequencies across the sector. It was simple and direct. "The coalition doesn't care about us. They proved that when they left our people to die. But we care. If you need help, we're coming. The Mugunghwa will not abandon you." Back at coalition headquarters, admirals and officials read the reports about the rogue human ship. They saw the battle footage. They saw how it had defeated forces that should have destroyed it. Admiral Kavex, a senior Vaxir officer, issued a warrant for Day's arrest. He called him a terrorist and a criminal. But among human populations across the galaxy, something else was happening. They were starting to believe again. They were starting to hope. Because one man and one old ship had shown them something important. Humans could still be strong. They could still fight. They could still matter. And the Mugunghwa was just getting started. The coalition sent the Eternal Judgment to kill them. It was a Vaxir hunter-killer ship, built specifically to eliminate threats that normal patrol vessels could not handle. It was fast, powerful, and equipped with technology that was decades ahead of anything the Mugunghwa carried. Its captain was Vren, a decorated officer who considered the destruction of the rogue human ship to be a matter of honor. Kang Day had known this would happen eventually. You could not embarrass the coalition by winning battles they said were impossible, without someone coming to shut you down. He had prepared for this moment. The crew had spent weeks retrofitting the ship with new systems. Taeyang had built electromagnetic pulse mines from salvaged human warheads. They were old technology, simple and crude, but they worked. Yunji had installed reactive armor plates across the hull, panels that would explode outward when hit, deflecting incoming fire. Most importantly, Hana had somehow gotten 3 different jump drive systems to work together. They were from 3 different species, built on 3 different principles, and they should not have functioned as a unit. But Hana had made them work through sheer determination and clever engineering. The result was unpredictable and unstable, but it gave the Mugunghwa something it had never had before: the ability to run if necessary. The confrontation happened in the Ashen Belt, a massive debris field where ancient battles had left thousands of wrecked ships and broken stations. Sensor readings were unreliable here. Navigation was dangerous. It was the perfect place for a fight between a sophisticated hunter and a desperate prey. The Eternal Judgment entered the belt like a predator stalking wounded game. It was sleek and beautiful, all smooth lines and integrated systems. Everything about it spoke of efficiency and power. The Mugunghwa, by comparison, looked like something built in a junkyard. Which it was. Captain Vren opened a communication channel. His reptilian face appeared on the Mugunghwa's main screen, his expression one of contempt mixed with curiosity. "Kangde," Vren said, "you have caused significant trouble for the Coalition. Surrender now and your crew will be granted mercy." Day looked at the face of the Vaxir captain. He thought about the logs from the Mugunghwa's final battle, about how the Coalition had left human ships behind to die. He thought about the colony transport that would have been destroyed if the Mugunghwa had not come. "No," Dai said simply, and cut the communication. The battle began. The Eternal Judgment was faster, so it struck first. Precision plasma lances, weapons designed for surgical strikes, lanced out across the debris field. They hit the Mugunghwa's hull, burning holes through armor plating, but the holes did not spread. Sealed bulkheads contained the damage. Backup systems rerouted power around the destroyed sections. The Mugunghwa kept moving, kept fighting. Day used the debris field to his advantage. He flew the ship through gaps between wrecked hulls, using the metal corpses as cover. He laid mines in the Mugunghwa's wake, crude but effective traps. When the Eternal Judgment pursued, 2 of its shield generators were disabled by EMP blasts. Vren was a skilled captain, but he was used to fighting enemies who followed proper military tactics. The Mugunghwa fought like a cornered animal, unpredictable and desperate. It was not elegant. It was not efficient. But it was effective. Taeyang opened fire with every weapon the ship had. Railguns, missiles, plasma cannons, even old chemical explosive warheads that other species had stopped using a century ago. The Eternal Judgment's sophisticated defensive systems were designed to counter modern weapons. They did not know what to do with a mix of old and new, crude and advanced, all being thrown at them at once. The missiles were the worst. Taeyang had built them without electronic guidance systems, just simple gyroscopes and basic targeting. The Eternal Judgment's AI tried to hack them, tried to turn them aside with electronic countermeasures. But you cannot hack something that has no computer. The missiles just kept coming, dumb and unstoppable. Dozens of them hit. The Eternal Judgment's shields held, but they were being drained by the constant barrage. Vren tried to disable the Mugunghwa with an ion beam, a weapon designed to shut down electrical systems. It hit perfectly, and half the Mugunghwa's systems went dark, but only half. The redundant electrical systems, the multiple power grids that Hana had insisted on installing, kept the ship fighting with partial power. The Eternal Judgment's crew could not understand it. Their scans showed massive system damage, but the human ship kept shooting. Yunji saw an opportunity. The Eternal Judgment had moved close, trying to line up a killing shot. She launched her Marines in boarding pods, a tactic so old-fashioned that Vren's crew never considered it possible. The Marines cut through the Eternal Judgment's outer hull with plasma torches. They fought their way inside, battling Vaxir security forces in the corridors. The Vaxir were better equipped with modern body armor and energy weapons. But the humans were more desperate, more willing to take risks, more comfortable fighting in close quarters. Yunji led her team through the ship, planting explosives at key points. They hit the weapons control room, the shield generator stations, the main computer core. The Eternal Judgment's sophisticated integrated systems meant that damage in one area affected everything else. When Yunji and her Marines retreated back to their boarding pods, they left behind a ship that was tearing itself apart from the inside. Vren tried to maintain control, but his beautiful, efficient vessel was losing systems faster than his crew could compensate. The Mugunghwa, battered and burned, still had guns that worked. Day gave the order, and Taeyang opened fire with everything they had left. The barrage hit the Eternal Judgment's weakened shields and broke through. Explosions blossomed along the hunter-killer's hull. Vren made the smart choice. He ordered a retreat. The Eternal Judgment limped away from the Ashen Belt, leaving the Mugunghwa victorious but barely functional. The crew celebrated, but the victory had cost them. Yunjiwan, the young pilot who had flown them out of the salvage yards, had been killed when a plasma bolt had penetrated the bridge. 3 Marines had died during the boarding action. Dozens more were wounded. They held a memorial service in the observation deck. Each name was spoken aloud. Each loss was mourned. They committed their dead to space, bodies wrapped in sheets and released into the void following an old human tradition. Hana found Day in the damaged engine room afterward. He was staring at the destroyed systems, his face blank. "We proved our point," Hana said. "We beat a coalition warship. We could disappear now, live as pirates in the outer rim. They'd eventually stop looking for us." Day shook his head. "No, we're not just fighting for ourselves anymore. Every human in the galaxy who's been dismissed, abandoned, killed because the coalition decided we don't matter. This is for them. We're going to make them see us." Over the next weeks, the crew worked to repair the Mugunghwa. They used salvage from the battle, stripping parts from the debris field. Their reputation grew. More humans came to join them, bringing skills and resources. The ship that had started as a salvage project was becoming a movement. Day pushed the repairs further than before. He did not just want to fix the damage. He wanted to make the ship stronger. He wanted to build something the galaxy had never seen before. A weapon born from human stubbornness, human adaptability, human refusal to accept defeat. In a hidden asteroid base, surrounded by people who believed in him, Kang Day continued to work. The Mugunghwa would fly again. And when it did, the galaxy would learn what it meant to underestimate humanity. The transformation was not complete yet, but it was coming. 6 months passed like a dream made of metal and fire. Kang Day worked every day on the Mugunghwa, often forgetting to eat or sleep. His hands became covered in cuts and burns. His muscles ached from climbing through tight spaces and lifting heavy equipment. But the ship was changing. Slowly, section by section, it was coming back to life. Day had lost his job at the station after Thelcor caught him using station power to run tests on the ship's systems. The overseer had been angry, shouting about theft and regulations. Day had not argued. He had simply packed his tools and moved completely onto the Mugunghwa. He had nowhere else to go anyway. Money was a problem. Day needed parts, and parts cost credits he did not have. He started trading his labor to other salvage workers. He would repair their equipment or help them with difficult jobs in exchange for components he could use. Sometimes he would sneak into the salvage yard at night and take pieces from ships that nobody cared about anymore. It was during one of these late-night scavenging trips that he found something that changed everything. He was pulling a power coupling from an old Krithian freighter when he discovered a data core still intact and functional. He took it back to the Mugunghwa and plugged it into his computer. The data core contained the Mugunghwa's original logs from its final battle. Day spent hours reading through them, and what he learned made his blood run cold. The Mugunghwa had not been destroyed in battle. It had been abandoned. During the Battle of the Forgotten March, the Coalition fleet had been losing ground against pirate forces. The Coalition admiral had ordered a retreat. The human ships, including the Mugunghwa, had been ordered to hold position and cover the withdrawal. They were supposed to buy time for the alien vessels to escape, but the promised reinforcements never came. The extraction ships never arrived. The Coalition fleet had simply left the humans behind to die. The Mugunghwa had fought for 6 more hours with no support, taking damage that should have killed it 3 times over. In the end, with most of the crew dead and the ship falling apart, the survivors had abandoned it in the salvage yards and scattered. The Coalition had not saved them. The Coalition had sacrificed them. Day sat in the dark cargo bay reading the logs over and over. He felt something burning inside his chest. It was anger. It was rage. But it was also determination. He would make this ship fly again. Not just to prove he could, but to show what humans were capable of when everyone else counted them out. A week later, his sister arrived. Parkana stepped off a transport ship carrying 2 bags and wearing a determined expression. She was 3 years younger than Day, with sharp eyes and quick hands. She had always been smarter than him, but she had also been more idealistic. That idealism had gotten her discharged from the Coalition Navy. "I heard you were living in a scrapyard, working on an impossible dream," Hana said, when she found Day in the engine room. "Sounds like you could use help." Day wanted to argue. He wanted to tell her to go back to her safe job on the colony world. But when he saw the look in her eyes, he recognized it. It was the same look he saw in the mirror every morning. The look of someone who was tired of being dismissed, tired of being told humans were not good enough. "I could use an engineer," Day admitted. Hana smiled. "Good, because I've been doing some thinking about hybrid systems." Over the next 3 months, Day and Hana transformed the Mugunghwa into something new. They did not try to make it like a modern coalition ship. Instead, they embraced what made human engineering different. Human ships were built with redundancy. If one system failed, there were backups and backups for the backups. Alien ships were more efficient, using integrated systems where everything connected to everything else. Those ships worked beautifully when nothing went wrong. But when damage occurred, the whole ship could fail catastrophically. Dai and Hana started stripping out damaged alien components and replacing them with human-built alternatives. Where they could not build new parts, they salvaged them from the yard. They took shield generators from a Krithian destroyer and layered them over the Mugunghwa's thick armor plating. They pulled weapon systems from 6 different ships and installed them all, creating overlapping fields of fire. The work was crude by coalition standards. Nothing matched. The ship looked like it had been built from spare parts and held together with determination. Which was exactly what it was. News of their project began to spread through the underground networks of human workers scattered across the station and nearby systems. Other humans started showing up, people who were tired of being treated as second-class citizens in the coalition. Li Taiyang arrived first. He was a weapons engineer who had been fired from a coalition research facility for proposing designs that were too aggressive. He took one look at the Mugunghwa's weapon systems and immediately started suggesting improvements. Then came Kim Yoonji, a former Marine who had lost her entire unit when Coalition Command ordered a retreat without warning. She had cold eyes and fast reflexes, and she began training anyone who would listen in combat tactics. Word kept spreading, and more came. Mechanics, pilots, soldiers, hackers, all of them human, all of them carrying stories of being abandoned, dismissed, or betrayed by the Coalition. They came because the Mugunghwa represented something they had not felt in years, hope that humans could be strong again. 8 months after Dai had first climbed aboard the dead ship, the Mugunghwa's reactors roared to life. The sound was beautiful, a deep thrumming that resonated through every deck. Lights flickered on throughout the ship. Life support systems engaged. The ship's computer core activated, running diagnostics. "We did it," Hana whispered, staring at the readings on her console. But they had not just restored the ship. They had built something new. Something that combined the best of human and alien technology in ways no one had attempted before. The Mugunghwa was no longer just an old human dreadnought. It was a hybrid, a fusion of different philosophies of engineering, and it was time to see if it could fly. Day sent messages to everyone who had helped them. Within hours, they had a crew of 47 people ready to attempt a launch. Most of them had no official training on a ship this size. They were going to figure it out as they went. Day sat in the captain's chair on the bridge, a position he had never expected to occupy. Around him, his crew worked at their stations, checking systems and running final tests. Hana was at the engineering console. Taeyang was at weapons. A young pilot named Yoon Ji-won was at the helm, her hands steady on the controls despite her obvious nervousness. "This is insane," Ji-won said, but she was smiling. "Station control is going to lose their minds when we launch without clearance." "Let them," Day said. He activated the ship-wide communication system. "Everyone, strap in. We're leaving." The Mugunghwa's engines ignited with a roar that shook the entire salvage yard. Alarms started blaring throughout the station. Thelkor's voice came over the radio, screaming about regulations and theft and authority. Day turned off the radio. "Take us out," he told Jiwon. The Mugunghwa lifted away from its docking cradle. It rose through the salvage yard, past the dead ships and the workers who stopped to stare. Station security drones launched, trying to intercept them. Taeyang locked onto them with the targeting systems. "Permission to fire?" he asked. "Make it noisy but not lethal," Day said. "We're not murderers." Taeyang grinned and opened fire. The Mugunghwa's guns came alive, ancient weapon systems that still worked perfectly. The security drones scattered, unprepared for such aggressive response. The Mugunghwa accelerated, leaving the station behind. They were free. They were outlaws now, wanted by the Coalition. But they were also something else. They were proof that humans could still build something powerful, something that refused to die, something that would make the galaxy remember what happened when you abandoned humanity and left them for dead. As the stars stretched around them, Day made a promise to himself and to his crew. They would show the galaxy what human engineering really meant. They would become what everyone said was impossible. They would become legendary. The salvage yards floated in the darkness like a graveyard of metal giants. Ships from 100 different worlds drifted here, forgotten and broken. Some had been shot apart in battles. Others had simply grown too old to fly. Nobody wanted them anymore. They were just junk now, waiting to be cut apart and sold for scrap. Kang Day walked through the cold corridors of Depot Station 47, carrying his tools and wearing his old work suit. He had been working here for 10 years. Every day was the same. He would climb into dead ships, pull out anything valuable, and log it in the station's computer. The work was hard and boring, but it paid enough to survive. Day was 34 years old. His hands were rough from years of working with metal and machines. His dark hair was always messy, and his face showed the tired look of someone who had stopped dreaming a long time ago. He was human, and in this galaxy that meant something different than it used to mean. Humans had joined the Galactic Coalition 300 years ago. They thought it would be wonderful, joining all the advanced alien races among the stars. But it had not worked out that way. The other species looked down on humans. They said human technology was primitive. They said human ships were crude and ugly. They gave humans the worst jobs and the least respect. Day had learned to accept this. What else could he do? He was just one man, working in a salvage yard at the edge of known space. But today was different. Today something new had arrived in the yard. Thelkor, the station overseer, was standing near the main airlock when Day arrived for his shift. Thelkor was a Vaxir, one of the reptilian species that controlled most of the Coalition military. His scales were green and gold, and his eyes were cold and yellow. He looked at Day the way someone might look at a bug. New salvage came in last night, Thelkor said. His voice sounded like gravel being crushed. Old human warship, probably 200 years old. Go catalog it. Day nodded and took the data pad Thelkor handed him. He walked toward the docking bay where the new arrival waited. He expected to see another small patrol ship or maybe a transport vessel. Humans had built many of those during the early days of expansion. What he saw took his breath away. The ship was massive. It was a dreadnought, one of the heavy warships that Earth had built when humanity was fighting to establish itself in space. The hull was scarred and burned in places. Whole sections were dark and dead. But even broken and abandoned, the ship looked powerful. It looked like it had been built to fight, to survive, to refuse to die. Day walked closer, his boots clanking on the metal deck. He could see the name painted on the hull, faded but still readable. Mugungwa. That was an old Earth name, he knew. It meant the Korean rose of Sharon, a flower that bloomed again and again no matter how harsh the season. He climbed aboard through an open cargo bay. Inside, the ship smelled like old metal and stale air. His flashlight beam cut through the darkness. He could see corridors stretching away into the shadows. The ship was huge inside, with room for hundreds of crew members. Day spent hours walking through the dead ship, making notes on his data pad. He checked the engines. They were cold and silent, but they looked intact. He checked the weapon systems. They were offline, but they had not been completely destroyed. He checked the reactor core. It was shut down, but the containment vessel was still good. This ship could fly again. It would take work, a lot of work, but it was possible. Something stirred in Day's chest. It was a feeling he had not experienced in years. Hope, excitement, purpose. He went back to Thelkor's office, carrying his data pad and his idea. The Mugungwa is salvageable, Day said. I want it. Thelkor looked up from his desk. For a moment he just stared at Day. Then he started to laugh. It was a harsh, cruel sound. You want that wreck? Thelkor said. Human junk for a human fool. That ship is 2 centuries old. It was abandoned after the Battle of the Forgotten March. The Coalition left it to rot because it was not worth repairing. And you think you can fix it? Yes, Day said simply. Thelkor laughed again.
Even if you could fix it, what would you do with it?
That ship is obsolete. Modern vessels are faster, stronger, smarter. That old dreadnought uses fusion reactors while everyone else has quantum cores. It has manual controls while everyone else has neural interfaces. It is primitive. I still want it, Day said. Why? Thelkor asked. He seemed genuinely curious now. You owe me 10 years of back wages, Day said. Give me the ship and we'll call it even. Belcour thought about this. He looked at his computer screen, probably checking how much money the station owed Day. Then he looked back at Day and smiled. It was not a kind smile. Deal, Belcour said. Take your human junk. When you realize you have wasted 10 years of pay on a dead ship, remember that I warned you. Day did not care about the insult. He had what he wanted. He signed the transfer documents and walked out of Thelcor's office with the access codes to the Mugunghwa in his pocket. That night, Day could not sleep. He lay in his small quarters on the station, thinking about the ship. He had no money now. He had no real plan. But he had something he had not possessed before. He had a purpose. He thought about his sister, Hannah. She had been an engineer in the Coalition Navy until she questioned an order and got discharged. She was working on a colony world now, probably as frustrated and bitter as he had been. He thought about Minho, his old mentor. Minho had been a pilot during humanity's war for independence back before the Coalition. He was old now, living in a retirement facility on Earth, probably wishing he could fly one more time. Day made a decision.
He would fix the Mugunghwa.
He would make it fly again. And when he did, he would show everyone who had ever looked down on humans what human engineering could really do. The next morning, Day moved his few belongings onto the Mugunghwa. The ship was dark and cold, but it was his now. He set up a small living space in one of the crew quarters. Then he went to the engine room and started working. He pulled panels off the walls and examined the systems beneath. He crawled through access tunnels and checked every conduit and wire. He made lists of what needed to be repaired and what needed to be replaced. It would take months, maybe years, but Day did not care about time. He cared about proving something. He cared about taking something everyone else had thrown away and making it powerful again. The Mugunghwa had been forsaken, abandoned, left to die in a junkyard. But Day would not let it stay dead. He would bring it back. And when he did, the galaxy would have to pay attention. In the darkness of the salvage yard, surrounded by the corpses of 1,000 forgotten ships, Kang Day began to work. His tools rang against metal. His welding torch lit up the shadows, and slowly, impossibly, the Mugunghwa began to wake up.